All right, let's talk about the Democrats. Um, Chuck Schumer, we talked yesterday about how poor the timing was for him, that he's going on his book tour right when he's clashing with the left. He canceled the book tour, at least postponed it because of quote unquote security concerns. He also reportedly had meetings over the weekend with some of the leaders of the liberal groups, quote unquote groups, who did not allow him to bury the hatchet, or if they did, they allowed him to bury the hatchet in his own brain. So he's not doing too well in figuring out how to go forward. Now, uh, as the party continues to search for a message in messengers, there's a bit of a dispute about what to do. This is Jonathan Capehart, Washington Post, 103. Jonathan Capehart is on the left end of the Democratic Party. Here are the people who he thinks are doing a great job leading the resistance: Bernie Sanders, Chris Murphy, AOC, the aforementioned Governor Pritzker, Governor Walz, and Congresswoman Crockett. Okay, I'd say those all are pretty far to the left. Chris Murphy maybe less than the others, but they're pretty far to the left. Here's what Bernie Sanders, the aforementioned Bernie Sanders, put on Twitter just in the last news cycle. Do we have that? Yeah, there we go. The Democratic Party needs a major transformation. No one disagrees with that in the party that I know. It can no longer be a top-down, billionaire-funded, consultant-driven party. Most people in the party I know agree with that, except maybe the billionaires and consultants I know. It must be multi-generational, multiracial, a multi-general, multiracial working class party. Everyone agrees. In a time of growing oligarchy and authoritarianism, that's the only path to victory. Finally, contrast to people who think the left and the progressives are the ones who will lead back. Here is 104. This is a Politico story that says just the opposite. It says 104, please. It says centrist Democrats are having their moment. A string of special elections and some polling show the party might be getting pulled to the middle. Before I turn to Dan and Sean to talk about this, if you want to get a question or comment in, please raise your hand. Chances are I will not bite your head off today. In fact, I'll welcome you, even if you insult two-way, even if you insult Table 17. I will listen politely. Dan, where are we with Schumer as a case study and the party overall now after 2 bad weeks?
So I think where Chuck Schumer is he needs to get a strategy, because what happened last week and what's happened since Trump got elected is Schumer has paralysis. He is not moving in any direction. We need the base and we need moderates. That's how you put a coalition together to ultimately get victory. And the problem is that Chuck Schumer, like the vaunted history of Schumer is that he understood Missouri and Ohio and Arizona and all these different states to find the right candidates, to find the right message and produce victory. And now he's sitting here and he looks at the base that is seething with white hot anger. They want to fight everything all the time. And he says to himself, I know that's not good politics. And he looks at the moderates and he says, and he's hearing, we failed the common sense test. Why can't we, on 80-20 issues, just say it or kind of enter the conversation with some ideas? Because the base doesn't want them to. And so, it reminds me of Saving Private Ryan in that opening scene on Omaha Beach when they jump off the boat, everyone's getting blown up, and they find themselves ashore, and the guy says, Captain, what do we do? And he says, I don't know, but if we sit here, we're going to die. Schumer is just a sitting duck. So my advice to him is, you got to pick one or two fights. Like, put a strategy together, define your objectives, and go charge. Because he's sitting around telling both sides, I hear you and I'm with you. And the party's not moving.
Can I ask a question? Is Schumer a vindictive? I mean, Nancy Pelosi is one of the most vindictive politics that's ever existed. Is Schumer that way? Will he hold a grudge against Hakeem or,
He will. He less than her. He will against reporters.
Right.
I think. So I hear. Not less less than Pelosi against Democrats is my sense. Dan, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally. And they're different styles. Pelosi was ruthless behind the scenes with like subtle cuts. She'd cut you out of a committee, or she would make sure that you were kind of humiliated with a funding withdrawal. Schumer is much more like he just won't talk to you for a period, but then he'll be your best friend. Yeah, it's like Bill Clinton.
Yeah. Part of the problem he has now, again, I always go back to one of the two Haley Barbour quotes: "Good gets better, bad gets worse." when Chuck was seen as we've talked about here, Chuck was seen as the guy who understood both the base and the center, the guy who understood the rules of the game, the guy who could raise money, the guy who could convince donors the sky was whatever color he wanted them to think it was that day, and a guy who could, like Mitch McConnell, use the rules of the Senate and the media to get victories. And as you said, Dan, as we've talked about, it's not clear where his next victory comes from. And the frustrations amongst particularly the younger senators is pretty pronounced. Not, obviously not to mention the House, but the frustration amongst younger senators is pretty pronounced because he doesn't seem at this point to have the mojo he had for several decades